created a vertical kitchen garden using the GreenStalk Vertical Planter system. And today I want to give you an update. I want to share my successes, my failures, and I also want to share all my tips and tricks with you so that you can be successful when creating a vertical planter system. Last August, I took you along with me when I put together 2 GreenStalk vertical planters. I did one that's their regular size with the deep pockets and one which has the shorter pockets that they call their leaf. Then I planted some seeds and I said, let me see if I can have a lovely fall garden in Central Texas in these vertical planters. Now, I've heard from a lot of you that you've had challenges with vertical planting, and I understand completely. That's why I wanted to come and give you an update, number 1, on how my fall garden went, and number 2, how my spring and into summer garden, my vertical planter garden, is going to be going, and what I learned from my fall garden to hopefully make my spring and summer garden more successful. Now, all things considered, I want to say that my fall garden in my vertical planter, for the most part, in both of my vertical planters, for the most part, was a success. The first important thing that I want to share with you is that I've made sure that when I bought these vertical planters, I bought the spinning platform that they go on, and I bought the wheels. Being able to move them around in the hot Central Texas sun that we even have in the fall was very key to having success. I quickly want to mention that if you hear noise in the background, it's because we have a little pond with a fountain, so that's what you're hearing. But in any event, what I want to mention is, speaking of the wheels are best if you're going to be putting your GreenStalk vertical planter on a flat surface, like a patio that I'm standing on right now, or a balcony that has a flat surface. This is not something that's going to be easy to wheel around on dirt or grass. So if you feel that you're going to need to be moving your GreenStalk, as I do, then you want to have the wheels and a flat surface. If all you need to do is rotate your GreenStalk, maybe because you want to get the sun in different areas and you want to have it on a relatively flat surface, but it is going to be on grass or dirt, then really all you need is the spinning base. So that's really tip number 1, because I know I heard from a lot of folks who decided to get the wheels, but then were putting it on grass or dirt and really struggled tremendously. And I understand, because that's not going to work easily for you. What I found living here in Central Texas, and I think this will apply to a lot of us who live in the South or Texas or the Southwest, where we can have very high temperatures and in many cases live through droughts like we're living through right now in Central Texas, that the GreenStalk can actually come in very handy. I found that I was able to fill the reservoir every 3 days if, and this was the big part, if I was able to move my GreenStalk out of direct sun. I think many of us who live in Central Texas, Southern Texas, and in the Southwest know that often when plants call for full sun, that doesn't mean full sun where we live. A lot of plants can't take that hot afternoon sun that we get. And they often like shade. Yes, shade. I'm standing in the shade right now. I'm growing these tomatoes, yes, in the shade, with a little bit of dappled sun. And that's really during those times of year when the sun is just so strong. So a tip for those of us in most parts of Texas, as well as the Southwest, being able to have our GreenStalks in a place where we can move them around may wind up being crucial to our success. Now, if you saw my first video where I put the GreenStalks together, filled them with the dirt, and then I just started from seed, which is a nice thing with the GreenStalks, that I did find a lot of success being able to start right from seed as opposed to buying actual plants, which can be more costly. But what I learned was you need to be careful when you're putting seeds into these pockets. Don't be generous. Don't overseed. You have to keep in mind this is a relatively small growing area, and you don't want to go crazy if what you're growing is the type of plant that grows underground. In that first video, I planted Thumbelina carrots in the top of my GreenStalk, and I was too generous with the seeds, and then I was very hesitant to thin. I always have trouble thinning. I feel I'm losing plants, but what happened was I put too many seeds in one pocket, and I wound up with not just Thumbelina carrots. If you're familiar with that type of carrot, they look like little golf balls. I just had a lot of little peas. I grew them way too small because I didn't thin. So keep in mind that if you're going to direct sow seeds into these pockets, keep in mind the area and pay attention to how far you should plant the seeds apart from one another, and then just plant that amount of seed. Don't overdo it. Don't be in there like I was sprinkling. Your chances of your crop, in essence, growing successfully is going to be unlikely, or when you start to see the sprouts, you're going to have to thin. Now, how about starting with plants? If you're actually putting in plants, again, I think it's best not to overdo, because you want to give the plant that you put in this pocket the maximum amount of water and nutrients that it can extract from this pocket. So you'll see here, I just have one tomato plant in here. Now, speaking of tomato plants, some of what I have here was actually started with starts, small plants. I was able to find tomato plants, and these are the little cherry tomatoes, which we're going to talk about in a minute. I was able to buy these in a 6-pack for $2.50. That was an excellent buy, and so I forged ahead. They were small at the time, but I forged ahead and bought those and put those into each one of these pockets instead of starting from seed. Now, I did buy the little extenders that can go around the GreenStalk that are made for plants that tend to grow the way tomatoes do and can become somewhat heavy. But what I have learned through my various experiments with the GreenStalk, and I want to share with you, is that because of where I live, and because we are in a drought, because we are restricted on watering, and also too, regardless of where you live, you don't want to wind up having an astronomical water bill. I have found that keeping my tomato plants shorter, as opposed to letting them get long and heavy, works better, because the water doesn't have to travel as far to nourish the plant. So as we go through the season, I'm going to be snipping these back and not letting them get overly long. Also, being here in Central Texas, and this may help those of you also in our state as well as in the Southwest, I am growing cherry tomatoes of many different varieties, because I wound up buying more GreenStalks because I have been very happy with them. And I'm going to fill you in a little bit more in a minute about my fall update. But I find I have a lot of success here with cherry tomatoes, and at the largest going with your Italian plum, your Romas, those type of tomatoes. I don't find I have success with things like the beefsteaks and the big, round, large red tomatoes. I feel that for my GreenStalk where I live, that these varieties of the smaller type work better, and pinching them back so that I don't need to water excessively to get all the ways to the bottom of a long hanging tomato plant. Now let's talk about the fall garden. So here in Central Texas, we're really blessed. We can pretty much garden all year long. January and February can often be very unpredictable here, because we could be 70 and delightful, or we could be having an ice storm. It can be a little crazy. But I had my green stalks going, and I was growing the type of crops that would do well here in the fall if planted in my raised beds or anywhere in my kitchen garden. And I was growing the greens, like the kale and the Swiss chard and sorrel and so on and so forth. And they did relatively well. Now, I will let you in on another tip, and this is kind of funny, but it's really a matter of whether or not your dog is curious about all of this, whether or not you have a dog, and whether or not your dog is curious about these vertical planters. When I started this process, our dog, Indy, our sweet yellow lab, who's just a total love bug, he was young and he was extremely curious about what was going on with these vertical planters. I wound up, he's a little better trained now and he understands drop it or leave it, commands like that. But at the time, he wasn't too good with those commands. So I wound up having to sacrifice the 2 lower levels of my green stalks. But I didn't feel too bad about it. He got to eat a lot of kale and other greens. It's probably good for him. So that's just a little tip for those of you who, if you have a puppy or a curious dog or a dog who's not learned to leave it or drop it, but he knows those now, so I'm hoping that I'm going to have a little better success. And I'm actually going to, on these lower ones, I'm going to be growing from seed. So we'll see how that goes. And I will definitely come back and give you another update. But what I found was that I tried, before we went into January and February, to harvest as much as I could from my green stalks in terms of what was growing well. As I said, carrots, that didn't work out so well for me, but my herbs did well, and also my greens did well. So I harvested as much as I could before we went into January. Well, come January and February, we had some bits of an unpredictable weather. Now, I did buy the coverings for times when temperatures get below freezing, but I wasn't smart. I really didn't think that we were going to go below 32 degrees Fahrenheit for a couple of nights, but we wound up doing just that. And I didn't put my coverings on. So pretty much everything died that was left that I had not harvested died back. But what amazed me, and I actually should say that it really didn't amaze me because I should say I'm always amazed about sorrel. Because whether I have sorrel in a raised bed or I have sorrel right here in my vertical planter, sorrel does really well. Now, I would be interested in hearing in the comments below how sorrel does in your area. And if you've never had sorrel, I love it. It has a very lemony flavor, and the French make a sorrel soup that's really delicious. Sorrel does great here in Central Texas, so you'll have to let me know how it does in your area. Mine can survive, it seems like, any kind of conditions. So this is all, this is growing now, and it was, but it was still, there was a little bit still evident even after some of the frost we had in January and February. And so I just didn't do anything with it. I just let it be. And it started growing beautifully. Now, I want to talk about the herbs. In the leaf, and I'll wheel this over. I don't know if I've got the brakes. Oh, I've got the brakes on it. So that's another thing too about the wheels. You can put the brakes on, which is really nice because it helps it stay in one place. But when you want to move it, there's just 2 locks. It's easy to unlock, and then it allows you to roll it around. And I want to get back to this for a minute. We'll come back to talking about the tomatoes in a minute. But interestingly enough, I had oregano growing all on this top level of the leaf. I used the leaf, although they say, GreenStalk says you can put the veggies in here too. I just decided to use this for my herbs. Now, some of the oregano didn't make it back, but normally, oregano is a perennial, so it should come back every year. So this I did find interesting that, if this was in my raised bed or anywhere in my kitchen garden, it's funny because it'll often stay green all year long. It's amazing, but when it's planted like that. But I did lose some in the GreenStalk. However, these two are coming back beautifully, and actually both of these did have little bits of oregano that I could see even after the frost. And I think that that may have a little something to do with it. I should have covered it, because probably in the ground and in my kitchen garden, my actual, not my vertical kitchen garden, just my regular kitchen garden, which I've taken you on tours of in the back, in my backyard. And I have a little bit of a raised garden here as well. But I think that it has some protections in essence, as opposed to, this is more like being in a pot. And so in the ground, it might have just simply been kept warmer. However, I have learned now that I'm just going to keep this going. This will go all summer, this will go into the fall, and it will go into the winter. And if we have a frost, I'm going to be smart this time, and I'm going to put the frost cover over my GreenStalk to protect my herbs. But I've got different things coming back here. I don't have anything on this second level, so I am going to plant some herb. I'm going to do seeds here. I've got, this is, and oh, by the way, everything I had planted here was from seed. I've got my peppermint coming back, and I've got some spearmint over here. They actually may be both peppermint. You have to forgive me. I had to, it's funny, but I'm not quite 100% sure. This might have been lower down, or the peppermint may have been lower down. I'm gonna have to wait until they grow a little bigger and I start tasting them. But along with sacrificing the lower levels of whatever I was growing in my GreenStalk to my dog, letting him enjoy them, he was also pulling out my plant markers, so I had to lift those up as well. But this is very interesting to me because I have little bits of things coming back. I've got some, I believe this is dill coming back over here. I've got, gosh, I'm gonna have to wait till that one gets a little bigger, but I've got my chives coming back in here. There's some growing here. There's some coming up here. There's some coming up here. So the chives are doing beautifully. Look at this. This is really doing great. And I think sometimes too, I can't remember what I planted here. And I obviously had to pull out the, he's kind of a big guy, or a yellow lab. So I had to pull out some of these plant markers, but I'll wait and see. And again, I'll definitely bring you back and give you another update on what all is growing here. But I think we're doing quite well. And so I'm gonna put some seeds on this lower one, and I'm gonna put some seeds on this second one because I don't see anything in this area coming back. And here I'm just going to expand, since I've already got these mints growing here, I'm just going to add some more mint seeds. And I'll do the same here. Wherever I don't see dill growing, I'll add some more dill seeds. So I think that's dill. We'll find out. But I'm very happy. I really like, well, it looks like I got a little something coming here. We'll have to keep our eyes open. Oh, that might be some more mint. But I have to say, I really like this leaf version for growing herbs. I think it's excellent. And I'm very pleased, and I'm learning. You know, I wasn't perfect in how I maintained it, but I will tell you that I went a long time off in between watering because we have some very strict drought requirements, and we're only allowed to use our outdoor, you know, the sprinkler system once a week. And then there are restrictions on how much you can water with your hose because what happens is they'll kick in additional charges if you go over a certain amount of water. And so you want to be careful with that. As I said earlier, you don't want to get a massive water bill. And you really want to try to grow things that can function in your area on limited water. And how I found that I was able to accomplish this was because I did have these on a patio and I did have them on wheels. And that brings us to what I wanted to talk about, growing things here in Central Texas in shade/dappled sun. I am growing both of these, my herbs and my tomatoes, in primarily shade with some dappled sun. And all I do is just turn them when I remember, maybe once a day. I'll just turn them and let them go in one direction, and they'll get a little sun coming through one way or the other. But for the most part, they're fairly protected. And something I'm so excited about is how nice the tomatoes look. I've never really taken the time to grow tomatoes in primarily shade/dappled sun. And often what would happen is my tomatoes would look almost sunburned. Sometimes they would be splitting before they were even ripe. I just struggled a lot, especially in my kitchen garden in the back that gets a lot more direct southern exposure during the day. It just is too much. It's just too much for a lot of the plants that I want to grow. So I'm hoping that little bit of information will help those of you in Central Texas who may be struggling with this, as well as the rest of my sweet friends in the Southwest who also have shared with me that you've really been struggling with these. Try putting your vertical planters, your GreenStalk vertical planters, in an area where you can put them on a flat surface so that you can roll them out of the direct sun, especially the blistering hot summer sun that we get. In the fall, when I was doing the fall garden, I was allowing them to be in the sun longer than I am going to allow these to be in the sun longer. And the reason is we're in the spring right now, we're going into the summer, and these I have found when I did have them in more of the direct sun, and it really starts to heat up here, March, April, that they were kind of struggling. And when I moved them over here, they started to do better and they started to fruit. So go figure. I think they're just happier living here. So I think for the rest of the summer, they're gonna live here. I'll be sure to give you an update on how they do come the end of the summer. Normally, if I had tomatoes in my kitchen garden in the back, I would be getting fairly close to wrapping up for the season, because come June, it was just going to get too hot for them in the back there in that southern exposure sun. So I would pretty much be harvesting everything end of May, early June, and maybe getting a little bit through June, but pretty much mid to late June, you're wrapping up, you're cleaning up the garden, and you're just hunkering down through July and August, and then planning for your fall garden. So this is going to be very exciting because I'm really looking forward to be able to have tomatoes through the summer, like so many of my friends on the East Coast do. And speaking of other gardeners, my gardening friends, I just want to mention two folks to you. This is very important because I'm in the zone 8B, I believe, but in zone 8. And I have two friends who are in zone 7. But no matter what zone you are in, I think you will really enjoy learning from them. One is my friend Rob over at Ession's Family Garden. He's in Virginia. My other friend is Kay Cottrell, and she's in Tennessee. Rob lives in the suburbs. He's got a pretty good sized backyard, and he's turned it into a magnificent garden with his wife and their 2 sons. And all the information he shares is really helpful no matter where you live, no matter what zone you're in. And what's also fun about his channel is he'll often bring in some of his harvest to the kitchen, and he and his wife will cook something, and often the kids are the taste testers, which is very cute. But be sure to visit Rob, and I'll put the links to both Rob and Kay's channel in the description underneath this video, because I think you'll find the information that they share, especially Rob for your suburban type garden. What he shares is very interesting and very helpful on so many levels, no matter where you live. Kay, on the other hand, if you're older and you're interested in homesteading, you will really enjoy learning from Kay. Kay moved from Los Angeles and bought a 10-acre homestead in Tennessee. She's in her 60s like me, she's all by herself, and she is just flourishing with this magnificent homestead. And she often brings things in from her garden into her kitchen and does some cooking. And she's also well known for making a variety of natural remedies, which I think you'll have fun learning from Kay. But be sure to check both of those channels out, and I'll be sure to link to them below. But in any event, so I'm going to have these in the shade. We'll see how they do. If I feel at any time maybe they're struggling, maybe they need a little more sun, boom, I'll just unlock the wheels. I'll roll them into most likely early morning sun, because I really don't think they can handle the afternoon sun. Once you get past 12 o'clock here, it just starts to really heat up. And most of my plants just start to wilt and they're not happy. And speaking of direct sun, I want to take you over and show you another GreenStalk that I planted that right now is in the sun. And I want you to notice the difference. Here we've got some, I mean, it almost seems contrary to what we would believe, but here we've got blossoms, we've got fruit coming, in this case the tomatoes, they're fruiting beautifully. Look at these. Look at this. This is wonderful. Now, let's go over and take a minute. I'm going to show you my other planter. Now, this is my other GreenStalk planter. This is another one that I purchased. And as I said, I purchased these myself. This is not a sponsored post. I really am very happy with GreenStalk. So I did go ahead and invest in a few more. And the reason that I have this one in the sun and against, this is close to my house, it's stone. And so it reflects the heat as well. But so this is always a good option if we are going to get a frost come January and February. But the reason, what I'm doing here is really pretty much an experiment. I have got a lot of spicy peppers planted in these lower ones. And the reason that I'm doing that is spicy peppers do really well in Central Texas. They can survive all sorts of conditions, and they seem to be the only thing that in the past survived very hot summer drought conditions where they may have not gotten any water for a long time. So I'm experimenting with them in the GreenStalk and in the sun. And I've also got some tomatoes growing here. Now, if you notice, this is fascinating to me. There's no blossoms, there's no fruiting. I'm gonna keep an eye on it, and I will periodically, spin it. These are all different varieties of small tomatoes. Some are yellow, some are red, and we'll see how it all works out. But the reason that I want to do this, I want to be able to compare the tomatoes that are going to get more sun than the ones that are just getting the shade with some dappled sun. And I want to compare and contrast and see who, as we go into June and July, who does better. I think I already know the answer. And if this gets a little too much, if this does start to fruit and it just gets a little too much for them, I will move this into more dappled sun and shade. And I'm also going to make sure that I don't let these get much longer than they are now. I am going to be pinching them back because, again, with limited water, with being able to limit, with my allowance, my water allowance, so to speak, with the limited water I'm going to be able to give them, I don't want to get some really long plants that I then have to put the supports on for, because the water may not be able to get to the very end. I'd rather let them become maybe what I'm hoping to be bulky producers on shorter plants. We shall see. Again, experiments, more updates to come. And I really feel that the peppers, I think they can do what I might do, because I am just experimenting with this. Maybe come the fall, and then maybe next spring and summer, I'll just have one full planter of just peppers that I leave in the sun and don't really worry about. I think they're going to do fine. We shall see. But if I do need, because of the tomatoes I have, this is actually a pepper plant here, but if I do need to move this into dappled sun, I think the peppers will do fine. They just seem to do well regardless. And those are, I'm not, ooh, excuse me. I'm not talking about the sweet bell. They're all different spicy varieties. I've got jalapeno, sriracha, whatever I could find. Again, I was very happy because most of these I was buying in 6-packs for $2.50. So that was a real dream come true to get such a good bargain. Now I want to mention the folks at GreenStalk are terrific. They are so happy to help you with any trials and tribulations you may be experiencing with your GreenStalk. Now, if you don't already have a GreenStalk, they're so kind because they've given me a discount that I can pass on to my viewers, and all that information will be in the description underneath this video. Now, I want to share with you something about our pond. Some of you may say, oh my gosh, you know, you're in a drought, but you have a pond and the pond is going. But the pond is an amazing habitat for so many that are in our garden. The birds love it. We also have a bird feeder with sunflower seeds to help them, and they love having the pond. Other little animals that come and drink from the pond love it. Plus we have toads who love the pond and use the pond to reproduce, and we have fish. And so we really enjoy it. It's brought so much life to our garden. And having a little bit of water for these animals and the aquatics, and we've got some nice plants in there, and it's cute to see. We have a lily pad, and it's very cute to see the toads sometimes actually sitting on the lily pads. And so that for us is a wonderful thing to have. So I always say never be afraid to have a little pond, because it does provide a wonderful habitat for so many birds and animals and the aquatics. Hi sweet friends, I just wanted to jump in here for a minute and say welcome if you're new here and introduce myself. I'm Mary from marysnest.com and author of the Modern Pioneer Cookbook. Now I want to share another tip with you about working with a GreenStalk. And this may apply no matter where you live, but I think it's exceptionally helpful if you are in a drought tolerant area. Now, I will fill this reservoir. This is the reservoir on top, and again, you can watch that video where I go into so much detail. The video is so long. I think I don't remember exactly, but it might be bordering on close to 2 hours. And my husband and I were putting that together in 110-degree weather in August here in Central Texas. But it was a labor of love, and I wanted to share it with all of you because I know there were so many questions as how to put these things together and how to use them successfully. But this on top, this piece right here, is a reservoir that holds the water. I only will fill this once every 3 days. And I will just check the soil to see how it's doing. But I find that if I do every 3 days, I can be somewhat conservative in my water use and yet still have my plants do okay. If I find that it's exceptionally warm, and this is based, I haven't had to do this yet this year, but we're filming this. When you'll see this, it's going to be like early June, late May, early June. And when July and August come around, it may be very, very hot here. But I'm still gonna try just to fill my reservoir once every 3 days. And what I'm going to do in place of having to fill the reservoir, because this does take quite a bit of water, and I don't want to deal with a lot of evaporation before it has time to work its way through the entire GreenStalk, because the holes are very small. It waters it very gently. But if I find that maybe on the lower levels, maybe even on the upper levels, that when we get into July and August, it's very, very hot and very dry, and I'm trying to be very conservative and only fill this once every 3 days. I have this wonderful little sprayer. It's just got the very tiny holes, and I'm going to attach this to my hose, and I'm just going to do a quick once over to moisten everything to help add a little extra moisture to get them through a difficult time. But what I want to say about living where there is a drought and planting where there is a drought, you can actually get your plants to be very hardy by just giving them a little bit of water. Don't over fertilize, don't get to the point where they're growing very large. That's why I was talking about snipping back the tomatoes. Don't let them get so big that they have to work really hard at getting a lot of water to the end of the plant. Instead, try to keep them a little more compact. They will produce, because I've done this in my regular kitchen garden, in my raised beds in the back. Pinch them back, let them become nice and productive on a smaller plant, and then let them become toughened, so to speak. Let them become hardy under harsh conditions. Also, if you've read anything about plants, and this is specifically with organic gardening, that the plant often has to work harder to protect itself from various problems, it can produce more nutrients because it's those nutrients that's helping protect it from various problems, since it doesn't have the heavy pesticides. No, it has organic pesticides and all of that, but they're not at the same strength as the non-organic pesticides. And so often scientists have found that organic produce does contain more nutrients because it had to work harder at protecting itself. And I really believe that the same can be said for plants that survive through droughts. And maybe that has something to do with why spicy peppers are so important for us when it comes to good health. They are foods that are considered to be very high in anti-inflammatory compounds, which I'm going to talk to you more about in another video. The little foreshadowing. Hot spicy peppers often grow in very hot, drought tolerant, and they become drought tolerant because they're in very hot, drought-oriented climates. And maybe that's why they're so rich in anti-inflammatory compounds. It's something to think about. But so I like to have my plants, I don't want them to struggle, but I just want them to work at becoming strong and hardy and be able to resist the drought conditions best that they can. And so I find I fill this once every 3 days. I'm not really overwatering them by any stretch of the imagination. And if I find that they're really struggling, then we give a little dappling with one of these that have all the tiny little holes. It's like a little shower. And then we call it a day. And if I have to, I'm going to move it into the shade, dappled sun. And so that is how I have been getting my green stalks through the fall in terms of the update that I wanted to share with you during the fall, when fall here is actually very hot. And so you always want to keep in mind, if you live in a hot and drought-oriented climate, how can you best help your plants get through in just a suburban garden or any type of home garden? How can you best help your plants get through those difficult conditions without dying, but at the same time without being spoiled like they live in a more plush climate, or I should say lush climate, with lots of sunshine, lots of water? How can we train them, in essence, to produce what we want them to produce under harsh conditions, and hopefully still make them something that's very nutritious for us to enjoy? For my GreenStalk Vertical Planter, I'm going to be using my seeds that I have from Survival Garden Seeds. They're great seeds, and they're a wonderful company who's provided a discount coupon code for my viewers, so be sure to check the description below. Now, if you follow me over on the community page here on YouTube, I wanted to share with you a little update about my olive tree. I was so excited when I saw this at my local grocery store. And this is, you have to excuse my pronunciation, but is it Arbequina olives. And I was so excited to find this olive tree. And all I've done right now is actually my sweet son Ben helped me plant this in a large pot. And we may wind up transplanting it, but now this I've gotten full sun. And the reason is these olive trees do really well in Central Texas. And Texas Hill Country, or Texas Olive Company, or Texas Hill Country Olive Company, I'm not sure. I'll have to get all the right names for you. But they all grow olives. There's a couple of olive ranches, as they're called here in Texas. There's some right nearby us, there's some a little farther out in the hill country, but there's a variety of olive ranches here in Texas. And they often grow this variety because it grows very well under hot, dry conditions. I believe it's a Spanish olive, and it's going to produce a lovely black olive, and it's supposed to be rather abundant in its production after about 2 years. And the olives are wonderful for pressing because they give off a lot of oil, in addition to just an eating olive. But I think I will definitely be keeping you updated on this. I'm very excited about growing this, since I do live in olive ranch country, as they say, and I'm excited to see how this will do, and I'll definitely keep you posted. And if you live in Central Texas, if you're in the Texas Hill Country, if you've been growing olives, definitely let me know in the comments below. Now, if you want to see that video where I build the green stalks and go into a lot of detail about every single piece that the company offers and how to put it together, be sure to check out this video over here, where I have that as well as all of my garden videos for you in one playlist. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country garden. Love and God bless.